Hey guys, how's everybody going? It's VaulSC here. We're going to look at a game of infiNity between the Combined Army and Nomads factions in infiNity, and the bat rep will be on the mission Unmasking, where you've got to find the real designated target amongst a couple of decoys out there in the battlefield. Before I get into the play-by-play of this game and the specific army lists, I want to talk a little bit about the background and thinking of what I've been doing lately with Combined Army. Combined Army, as you guys may know, is probably my favorite infiNity faction, and when I say the word faction, I mean the vanilla version of Combined Army, along with the three sectorials, Shazvasti, Morats, and Onyx, all of which I play and really enjoy. But over time, I've had a lot of opportunity to really look at every single profile and evaluate them on the merit and put out a lot of YouTube information about them. And more lately, I've been thinking about one specific profile, one specific loadout, which I'm just wondering whether will be an enabler, something that which would really help a certain style of Combined Army, or whether it's not really worth taking. And because at the moment I'm undecided about whether it's really a good profile or not, that's made it a lot more interesting and thought-provoking. Now, the profile I'm talking about specifically is right here. It's one of the shrouded ones. It's the specific one where you have a Minelayer with the Dazer, a deployable equipment piece. So the thinking with this unit is that although it's not a specialist, and although it doesn't come with any anti-personnel mines or anything like that, and just has a boarding shotgun, it allows you to have a Dazer out on the field right from the beginning of the game. If you compare it to, for example, the Malignos, who is also equipped with a Dazer, the Malignos, for just 33 points, you've got an amazing specialist, Whip 14, an incredible killer hacker that also has Maestro, TO Camo with the SMG, comes with anti-personnel mines as well as the Dazer. So as an individual standalone unit, I feel like this Malignos profile is definitely better. I'd much rather take this. But the main point of difference, though, with the Shrouded Dazer Minelayer is that the Minelayer ability allows you to have that Dazer right from the beginning of the game. So for some reason you're playing with the second turn, you've already got the Dazer there, whereas the Malignos needs its own order and activation to actually place it on the battlefield. So the important difference here is that regardless of whether you're going first or second, you've got this Dazer set up somewhere on the table of your choosing, and it creates that saturation zone and that difficult terrain zone so that when your opponent is firing at your ARO pieces, the -1 burst. And if they're trying to attack your deployment zone with troopers, they are potentially going to run into this area of effect and get slowed down. And the theory behind this is that if you need to defend for some reason, if you're taking ARO pieces which are going to watch the table, you've got that little bit of an edge in slowing your opponent down, forcing more of a risk out of them. And Combined Army is a faction that has some individual pieces that are really dangerous in ARO. The most obvious one for me with this profile is the Avatar, of course, because the Avatar sitting there behind cover with ODD and Armor 9. It's got 3 structure points. It's BS 15 for firing back at you, Willpower 17 for discovering coma markers coming towards you, and taking an entire turn to just fire at it is a real risk. If you can imagine something like, even like a Cien Warrior with a smoke cloud, that's one of the better scenarios you can think of. Even a Cien Warrior in a 3-man link team, or a Marut who's got an with a smoke grenade near to him, who's got armor piercing on his HMG. These are models that could potentially take on that Avatar. But if it's just a plain old intruder in a smoke cloud with an HMG, you might find that the Avatar passes so many Ava saves that he's actually alive by the end of the turn, or at the unconscious state where you could potentially revive him and your opponent's just wasted all of those orders. The Dazer makes it even worse, though, because at -1 burst, you're spending all of these orders and shooting at the Avatar with just 3 dice down from 4, or 4 dice down from 5 if you're in a link team, for example. And it's just so much riskier. As soon as you lose that face-to-face roll, that damage 16 explosive round from his HMG is just going to be devastating. So the Dazer is really thought-provoking in terms of that kind of strategy where you're actually watching a big, huge fire lane with a big, beefy unit like that. But it's not just the Avatar that could benefit from it. You're also looking at things like the Overdron with plasma snipers or heavy rocket launcher. We're looking at the Noctifer missile launcher. You guys have seen in previous bat reps where I've had a couple of them in Shazvasti hiding with a Dazer nearby. Again, the weakness of ARO pieces are high burst weapons usually, and this Dazer could really be a swing. I did some maths on it. I looked at Dice Calculator and I found that it's not actually a huge chunk of equity in terms of the results, but you know, even 5 or 10% over a long period of time with a lot of games, with a lot of face-to-face rolls, can really make it worth it. So what I've been thinking about recently is a lot of different variations of lists. I've already got an Avatar a list ready to go with it, and obviously I already play the Sphinx Noctifers in Shazvasti with this setup. But this time around, I'm going to be looking at this one here, which is the Charonted version, where you've got the Charonted who can actually hang back, automatically discover camera markers coming towards your line, doesn't care about the smoke tactic because it's got MSV itself, and it's a BS-14 HMG with armor 5 in cover. The thing is, though, with the Dazer hanging around from this Shrouded Minelayer, it's a lot more difficult for your opponent just to gun down the Charonted and force it back into cover. So you can imagine some sort of HMG attacking a Charonted, -1 burst. The Charonted's not affected because it's only firing back with one shot anyway, and that can make it take a lot longer for your opponent to neutralize that ARO piece and move out. With the Charonted, I'm a big fan of taking a limited insertion list and just chucking some other big beefy things in there as well, and like I've done in the past, the Anathematic, quite liking him in there too. I usually like the Anathematic with the Sepsitor, if he's not going to be a lieutenant, but I am going to run the Hacker anyway, because with Unmasking, a Hacker is very useful for the midfield consoles, and the Hacker's still very powerful in terms of the ability to use Sucker Punch and so forth. So to back this up, we've got the Dat Shratzi to throw down smoke for the Charonted, a couple of cheerleaders, Bit and Kiss in there. I kind of like that just because if I know that my opponent's got a dangerous midfield hacker and the Anathematic might be vulnerable, having my own killer hacker with the repeater to fire out and eliminate it could be a big deal. Liberto, too good not to take, even in a limited insertion list. You can spend a command token changing the irregular into a regular, and also very good for protecting your HVTs out in the middle of the table. Seed Soldier is the first time I've actually taken this guy. I think that he's going to make it into more of my lists purely because I want to get into the habit of including a Forward Observer for the Liaison Officer missions. Not that this one includes Liaison Officer, but the great thing about this guy as a Liaison Officer is that he's already outside of your deployment zone. He's very useful for defending when it comes to that chest mine blowing up on opponents that didn't expect it. This is a list that already has heaps of camo markers because you've got Liberto plus the camouflage marker mine with a mine layer, and the Shrouded's out there as well. Then you've got the Seed Soldier, and your opponent may not be expecting that lone camo marker near to one flank to actually be something that can detonate a chest mine, so that's very, very dangerous. And then, of course, the Noctifer, because this synergizes and doubles down with the Charonted Mine Layer combination. So that's the theory here, but I've got some other versions ready to go where it's Overdrawn instead of Anathematic, or Overdrawn instead of Charonted, but the Anathematic's still there, or Shishkin's in there. A few different combinations there, which I'm going to be trying out over a period of time. My opponent's Nomad lists, I've had to construct this from memory. I actually don't think he had a 0 Assault Hacker for this game, but it's the only thing that's slotted exactly into the points remaining after I reconstructed everything else in his list. He's running the Spitfire Zonnaut, love that guy. Krizaborek HMG, pretty standard. Heckler Killer Hacker, I don't see a lot of need for this guy when you could just take a jammer, but the Cyber Mines kind of caught me off guard this game. I forgot that Cyber Mines don't just affect hackers, it's hackable models. Krakot Red Fury, I've been explaining to this particular player why the Krakot's so good, and he believes me and he's going to be doing that himself a bit more. Puppet Master Minelayer, good for defense and counterintelligence, of course. Flash Pulse, of course. Jaguars, great. Morans, staple for Nomads, really. More Jaguars. Stock Daktari with Zonbot. I believe the Interventor was his lieutenant, but not 100% sure. Warcore, and again, there's a 24 point thing missing, and there was a leftover camo marker on the table that wasn't revealed at the end of the game, so it may have been something like this, maybe not specifically that profile. So let's get to it. The dice are rolled for deployment and everything, and my opponent opts to go for first turn. So I am left with choosing deployment zones. This is a shot of the table from the side. So if we go and find a pen, I'm going to be on this side over here. So this is going to be Combined Army, and then Nomads are going to be across here. So you can see that it's a fairly scattered around table. There are some long sight lanes and a fair bit of verticality, a bit of a town sort of setup. My opponent arranged most of this terrain before I made it to the LGS. So I quite like that. I really quite like playing on boards where my opponent's taken responsibility. I sometimes second guess myself and wonder whether after playing a game I subconsciously made a table that helps me too much. So this is a picture from the side of the table that I will be setting up on. There's a convenient sort of sniper tower up top there. This area is not very well laid out because the deployment zone sort of cuts off around about there. But plenty of spots at the back to hide things, especially if you're playing a limited insertion list like I am. My opponent on this side, fewer vertical sort of sniper towers, but still plenty of places to deploy troops. So he'll be deploying first. Let's have a look at what he's got. There's the Puppet Master with its mine over here, made to look like an intruder. I thought it was intruder this game because I wasn't even paying enough attention, which was pretty silly for me because this is open information, the mine layer ability. He's got his first decoy over here with a camo marker next to it. This is the camo marker that I thought would turn out to be a 0 or something like that. Jaguar on the roof here, prone. Got a Moran, represented by the Aristaya Lakshmi miniature. There's a couple of crazy koalas just sitting around. Also, transconductors on with a long view of the battlefield. There's another decoy over here for unmasking there. Okay, let's just move this camera once more. Grab the pen again. So we just talked about the decoy over there. We talked about the Moran setup with the crazy koalas. The other two decoys are here and here. Note that the objectives we're going for are the consoles out in the middle field. There is an interventor inside this building. We'll see that shortly. There's a little helper bot there, which is attached to a Dactari who's sitting around somewhere. This is a Heckler with a jammer. Sorry, this model over here, I believe, is actually the Heckler with the assault pistol and cyber mines. Crazy Borax behind this building tower here. Got a Jaguar there, and I think that's another Jaguar over that side. Moving to the left-hand side of the deployment zone. So we just saw where the Cruiser was. There's a Jaguar there, another Jaguar over here, Walker on top, standing up for some reason, not prone. And there's the Krakot Renegade who rolls up regen and +3 fizz, I think it was. That's the jammer with the, the Heckler with the jammer, and I think that's the Dactari there, if I recall correctly. And moving on. Okay, so just a bit of a photo. You can see the outline of his Interventor Hacking Device Plus inside the building, who I believe is his lieutenant in this game. And a bit more of an overview where you can see the two decoys out in the midfield. On my side of the table, I'm laying down this is a hidden deployment photo of where the Noctifer is going to be. The Noctifer has a view to this console here, so you can actually see just over to it. So hopefully my opponent moves up and tries to press the button on the console. I can hit him with the Noctifer. And Noctifer also has a view through this little gap here. There's the crates there, and there's the billboard here. So this little solid area is a gap where it can see. There's also another sort of gap of line of sight where it can fire through over here. And note that the Dazer is positioned right there. So the Dazer's area of effect is all the way through here, meaning that these lines of fire that the Noctifer has will be -1 burst for opponents. Now, still getting used to the Dazer. One thing you've got to be very careful about is it can be a double-edged sword. If it turns around to be your turn and you're trying to shoot their arrow pieces, they will also benefit from the Dazer. And also, as your troops are moving out towards this side of the table, the zone's going to affect you as well. So just be careful of which models have multi-terrain, which ones don't, and make sure you clear a path for the models that are going to need to be able to get through there. Be careful about taking like models that have 4-2 speed or 6-2 speed in your list. Very important. So this guy here specifically is the Shrouded Minelayer, and this is the Liberto, and his mine is further over a field. We'll see that in a bit more detail in a sec. Hidden deployment photo for my Anathematic right behind these stairs. It's already in the Dazer zone, so it's going to go up the stairs and leave the Dazer zone and start pressing the buttons later on in the game. Okay, right-hand flank. Move this up here so you can see that's my real designated target guy. This is one of the decoys. That's the Liberto's mine, just ready to go off in front of the area where my opponent might try to come after my real designated target. We've got Bit here behind the building and Kiss here with enough of a view that it can also see along here. That's quite important. I want to slow my opponent down when he's going after my my objectives. That charts a Witch Soldier nearby to where the Torontid's going to be later on, and enabling him to throw smoke here, of course, and benefit that. And the Seed Soldier over this side, protecting the left-hand flank. Okay, so there's the background view. You can see the Anathematic is hidden deployed here, Noct for hidden deployed here, Torontid is going to be here as the reserve model, Datratse for throwing the smoke through that side, but Kiss, Liberto, Shrouded, Dazer, Decoy, the real reserve, real designated target, the other decoy, that's the Seed Soldier, and we've got an R-Drone facing backwards just in case of any drop troopers. And on the extreme left-hand side, we've got the Icadron as well over here next to the Seed Soldier and R-Drone. Opponent's Reserve Trooper and Data Tracker will be the Zondnort with Spitfire, and my one will of course be this beautiful Torontid here, positioned behind this building to be able to protect from the left-hand flank where the bike's potentially coming to attack me from, and over here, again protecting that designated target, which is worth all the points. So really happy with his position. I would have put him on the top of the building, but even with the help of the Dazer, the Kreza Borak is still going to cut through that Dazer pretty mightily, because it's going to go from 5 bursts down to 5 bursts down to 4, but even more importantly, it's going to affect me with a -3 to hit from the full auto level 2 ability, which I'm not really too keen on taking hits from. And the Torontid will also be the Data Tracker for potentially moving out later in the game and eliminating that enemy target once the Anathematic has pressed all the buttons. So here we go, first turn for Nomads. I'm spending a command token to reduce his auto pull by 1, even though he's got counterintelligence. I'm happy to do that this time around. Krakop moving forward with Impetuous. He's going to be heading towards my line with his brutal Red Fury. And the bike moving out around the right-hand flank as well. This is with Impetuous moves. So you can see here, first up, we've got the Krakop moving through. He's going to be getting into a position where he's going to fire his Red Fury at Kiss, who is going to try and defend himself with an adhesive launcher, but it's going to be pretty easy for the Red Fury Krakop to eliminate that, and he does indeed take it down. We then have the bike moving around through this objective on the right-hand side. You can probably only barely just see it, but the Torontid is positioned there. So he's going to be moving around here and firing his Red Fury at the Torontid. Now, this is a pretty bad firefight for him because he's +3 range, -3 cover. I'm +3 range, and he won't get cover or mimetism against the Torontid because he's got Impetuous, and he's up against MSV. So in order to help solve that problem, he moves his Moran up behind where the bike is positioned, and then he uses his the repeater provided by the Moran with the Interventor to plant white noise right over this objective where the bike can then move out. So the bike does drive out and does indeed have a firefight with the Torontid. Let's just back up for a sec though, because stats-wise, the bike, if I recall correctly, what's the Bliss skill again? Bliss skill 12. Torontid Bliss skill 14. The Torontid will be +3 range, -6 for white noise, giving him a 1-shot on an 11. The Dazer is all the way over here, so that's not really going to affect this particular firefight. Whereas the bike will be firing at +3 range, -3 cover, so 4 dice on 12s. So it's pretty good odds for the Spitfire to cut through there, and then I'll be saving with armor 5 +3 for cover. But yeah, my opponent, this is not the most super efficient face-to-face roll in the world. It's just decent. It's just solid. Unfortunately for him though, bad luck strikes for the bike, and the Torontid actually wins the face-to-face roll with a decent roll, like a 9 or something, and he doesn't get any decent dice himself. And the bike is actually rendered unconscious, which is a stroke of bad luck for the Nomads right off the bat. I've been having some really unlucky games recently, though, so it's hard for me to cry for him here because I've just had a shocking run of bad luck on a lot of my games recently. Anyway, Moran's right here, just positioning the Crazy Koalas in the right spot, and then what he's doing here is he's going for the console and turning that console on, and that's going to reveal this middle decoy in the middle of the table, which is now available for capture or destruction, however you want to talk about it. But it's not the correct real designated target. So we've got the Krakop Renegade moving in this time towards the position of the decoy. Doesn't quite get line of sight to it, but he will get line of sight to, I believe, my Flashpulse bot. over here, so you can see the flashbulb spot there, and the Krakot's way off in the distance through to the middle of the field there. And I decide that this is the time that I will actually reveal my my Noctifer, because I know it'll be nearing the end of his turn soon, and the Noctifer is firing through the Dazer area, and that's what the Dazer's for. It's going to mean that if the Krakot fires back at me, going from 4 dice down to 3 dice is really important because it's less chance of a crit. If he's Bliss skill 11, it's going to be a net -6, so it's going to be 3 dice on 5s, and the Noctifer's going to be hitting him on something like a 12 or a 15, depending on range. So it's a really good opportunity to try and nuke a dangerous enemy model, and also distract him and prevent him from killing one of my decoys straight away and gaining a lead on points. So my opponent decides wisely to ignore the flashbulb spot in the distance that it can barely hit and try to go for the crit against the Noctifer. Because again, if he does win the face-to-face roll, this gun's very efficient against the Noctifer because of shock, right? It gets round dogged. So my opponent does make that play and does get lucky here and does in fact roll a crit on a 5. And I can almost feel like we're even now because he lost his bike due to a stroke of bad luck, but killed my Noctifer due to a stroke of good luck. So, you know, it goes up and down, right? So that happened, but that's what infiNity is all about. So he's now running very low on orders here for the Krakot, pretty much out of orders, in fact, and decides to move up here with his Heckler Jammer just to come in range of the objective, where he'll be able to use his jammer on my troopers that come up to try and press the button. Elsewhere, as part of a coordinated order, I believe, just reshuffling models like the Jaguar and the Kreezer to improve their line-of-sight ability and ARO's potential to various parts of the battlefield before we turn over to my turn. He's also putting a couple of units into, what do you call this, suppression fire here from the Puppet Master and the Daktari around the back line. Just in case, of course, I drop some trooper in the backfield. He still sees there's a slot missing because there's no anathematic on the table at this point, so he knows that there's a lot more stuff to come. For that reason, looking at my my order pool, I've got 7 regular orders and an irregular for the Libertos. We can't see the order for the anathematic, and I've lost the order for the Noctifer, but I've still got the Lieutenant token there. So initially, with the Datratsi moving out, throwing a smoke grenade with Impetuous, but it is up against the flashbulb spot in the distance, who's actually able to barely get line of sight to him and fire at him. This goes really awkwardly for me, and the Datratsi loses, even though he needs a 17 to plant the smoke, and does get blinded, which was really annoying. Spending the Lieutenant order on the Charonted just to back up around the corner and fire at the corpse of the bike. I'm doing that because we both know that he has the opportunity to move the Palbot, the helper bot, from his Daktari later in the game to revive the bike. And the bike was the data tracker, and I gain a point for his data tracker being dead by the end of the game. So I just really want to eliminate that possibility, and it's very easy and convenient to do so here with the Charonted, so that happens first. Then we can move the Charonted around to start clearing some enemy models out. Now, we were talking about the Dazer earlier. The Dazer can be helpful if I'm AROing with, you know, a 1 dice in my reactive turn, but again, double-edged sword. You've got to be very careful with the Dazer positioning, otherwise you're going to be firing through it yourself. And this is a learning experience for me here. Charonted moving out, trying to shoot at the Krakot, trying to shoot at his Warcore, trying to shoot at his Transconductor Zond, and going from 4 dice down to 3. Now, that's still okay, because the Charonted's still a very powerful attack beast, and it still works out in my favor, but ideally, you'd want to have it rigged so that the Dazer covers a specific area that they have to move through, and then in your turn, you can easily move out beyond the radius of the Dazer to actually get your full burst somehow. I mean, if you can manage that, then that's the ideal situation. So Krakot is laid low by the Charonted, going unconscious here. Charonted continuing to move out through the area of effect of the Dazer, mind you, and coming up against this Warcore and the Transconductor Zond. Transconductor Zond does go down, and the Warcore, for some reason, he had it standing up. And although when I rolled the dice, I would have actually failed this and been hit by the blinding ray of the flash pulse had it not been standing up, he did have the Warcore standing for some reason, and I mentioned that that was a bit of a mistake from him, but on the other side of things, it does give the Warcore a little bit better line of sight, and if he feels like it makes very little difference anyway, especially against troopers that would have been deployed on sort of higher ground like towers, then You can sort of see the argument for it, but generally I think that was a little bit of a misplay. Still, Shrouded manages to win, kills the Warcore despite the -1 burst from the Dazer, and we continue on. There you go, unconscious. And at this stage, we're moving just barely beyond the line of sight of the Cruiser, as you can see from this little laser pointer. There's a way of me actually coming through this area without coming into line of sight of our friend the Cruiser. So that's what happens. Shrouded moves up now into line of sight of this Heckler Jammer, but out of range of his ability. Actually, no, it comes into range of his ability at some point. And although this is kind of dangerous, I've moved out of the Dazer zone now, or so I thought, and we are able to go after the Heckler. Because this is a face-to-face roll, I felt a bit more confident, because I've got plenty of BTS should I fail this, and the Heckler's only got one shot at this. I thought that I could trace line of sight from the side of the base of the Shrouded to the enemy model. But apparently, according to the rules, if you are caught in the zone of control of the Dazer, you count as being entirely inside it for the purposes of its effects. So I would have been 3 dice -1. What I actually did during the game is I picked up 3 dice of one color and a 4th dice of a different color, because we weren't sure of the ruling, and we just rolled them all. And that additional dice I would have gained had I been outside of the Dazer was a miss anyway. But the other 3 dice did work out well, and the Heckler gets hit, and Heckler is destroyed, which will make life easier in future turns. So Shrouded now just retreating back behind the boxes. I'm really just trying to weaken him and soften him up and prepare for a turn 3 push, which will seal a deal and win me the game. So Shrouded pulling all the way back now. I don't want to be facing a active turn Cruiser, so retreating is best. In fact, we go all the way back behind this building here where we started. And that's where I want to be, because even if I get shot at by that HMG, I'm going to take 1 or 2 wounds. That'll allow me to guts back behind cover, and the Dazer is going to be really helpful for preventing the Cruiser from coming towards my deployment zone and shooting things. So pretty happy with how that worked out. The Noctifer was a bit of a pain to lose that, but I'm really happy I've now eliminated his bike, the Karakot Renegade. I've taken out the Heckler Jammer. He is ahead in terms of the button pressing on the consoles, but the Anathematic in the scenario will get +3 whip, so 19s on 2 dice, so only a double 20 will stop him from pressing buttons. He's going to do that very efficiently, and close range with Teo Camo and the plasma rifle is going to make him very lethal against enemy designated targets. Okay, so Nomads turn 2, Kariza Borak now moving out directly towards my line, and his plan is just to go nuts with his guns. Does just barely get line of sight to this Icodron, which I've positioned here outside of cover for that particular angle, and this is beyond the Dazer's area of effect, so the Cruiser does absolutely wreck the Icodron. I wasn't really wanting that to happen, but it turns out that there was line of sight, whereas I thought that there wasn't. Cruiser continuing to move in. I had also moved with a coordinated order my Shrouded Minelayer a bit closer here to help protect this decoy. So the Cruiser does come in range here. I decide not to respond, so he continues moving in, and eventually we're going to have a bit of a shootout here. Now, fortunately, the Dazer is going to help me out at close range. If he does go for his HMG, he's going to be -3 for range, -3 for camo, -3 for... no, I think that's all. Maybe -3 for cover, not sure. But anyway, it's not going to be a very good way to go against a shotgun at that range. So I think he goes for the pistol. And initially, this face-to-face shootout between these models works out in my favor, and the shotgun hits home and reduces him by 1 wound. He's also going to want to move in and go up against the stun pistol or the dodge of the decoy as well. Initially, the decoy does dodge prone, and then he's going to need to move in later. But after this first little duel here, this first shootout, the Cruiser's taken 1 wound, but then does eventually manage to clean up the Shrouded once he gets into a better position with cover. Initially, he was firing at me without gaining the benefit of cover, so the next order after that, he does move through with cover and beats the Shrouded and kills it, which will allow him to fire at my decoy here and eliminate that. Before he does so completely, though, just popping around cover and going for the Shrouded, and he finally falls into my trap here. So this shot through here is intended to get line of sight of the Shrouded, which it does, but he didn't realize I had my hidden deployment silhouette here, and I fire back at him with a plasma gun. And the beauty of this is that if you split your shots, both lots of shots are going through the Dazer. So if he goes, okay, I've got 3 shots, I'll put 3 into the Tronted, 2 into the Anathematic, it will go down to 2 and 1, which is -2 burst overall. So the best way to wrangle it is to put 1 shot into one model, which is barely going to have any effect, and 3 shots into the other, which will be really not ideal against such big, beefy targets. We've got 2 models here which are worth approximately 80 points. So the plasma gun goes off, the HMG goes off. Interestingly, the Cruiser actually does pretty well in this firefight, despite the bad odds from him and the trap that he's walked into. And the Cruiser manages to survive and pulls back behind the cover here, which is good for him. But he knows that he's not in the best spot. If he doesn't retreat, he's going to get killed by the Anathematic when it turns over to my turn. And it's going to be very difficult for him to do damage to these guys, considering they're in cover and they've got 3 wounds each. So he pulls back around the other side of the crates, goes for the Tronted now without coming to line of sight of the Anathematic, and again, despite the Dazer, does very well and reduces this guy to NWI. So quite a lucky set of rolls here for our Cruiser friend, but this is about all he can do. He's knocked my Lieutenant back into cover. I've got Mnemonica, so losing the Lieutenant is not really going to matter. Losing the Data Track is going to lose me some points, so that's more significant. But he's just not managed to get any significant kills here, apart from the Shrouded with the boarding shotgun. Elsewhere, moving through with his Heckler, repositioning the Moran, and laying down the Crazy Koalas, setting them in place. Then it turns around to my turn, because that was all he's able to do. So moving out now with the Anathematic, I don't have a huge number of orders here, unfortunately. I've lost my Shrouded, I've lost my Echadron, I've lost my Noctifer. But the Anathematic moves up anyway and gets to a point where he can fire again, unfortunately, with the Dazer. So, you know, Dazer, double-edged sword, you've got to be very careful about how you're going to incorporate this in your lists. But the Dazer, and don't forget too, there's an exclusion zone, so the Dazer has to be a lot closer to my line than I would otherwise normally want it. So moving through with only 2 shots from the plasma gun, but my opponent only really able to respond with 1 shot, and he's got no MSV2, so the Anathematic definitely with a clear advantage here. And as he moves here, he just absolutely obliterates the Cruiser as you'd expect. Then moving through, coming to a spot where he can potentially press this button and go after the enemy HVT here, and later on the one over here as well. But getting to this point, realizing that there's a bit of a shootout here with the Moran, who's going to try and go after me with its combi rifle. We are outside of the zone at this point. So Anathematic shooting back at it from this angle here, the camo marker choosing not to reveal. And although we didn't do it at this point, my opponent didn't really realize, and neither did I at this point, that if I fire the plasma gun specifically on this angle, the template of the plasma impact blast is actually going to damage the Heckler here. So probably not the best positioning from my opponent, to be fair, against a plasma gun, but he wasn't exactly expecting a plasma gun at this point either. But we forgot, so only the Moran dies in this ensuing firefight, and the camo marker is okay. That is going to allow me to go and press the button successfully with the Anathematic after doing this little kill here. And then going after the HVT here is going to respond with a stun pistol. Now, incredibly, rolls a 3, which is turns out to be a critical hit. So the Anathematic just gets stunned without even getting a chance to shoot their old friend here. So normally I would be crying about how terribly unlucky I am, but it's not worth crying about dice rolls that don't affect the game very much. I'm very much in the lead here, and I'm very likely to win from this position because I've got an entire third turn left to me. So if the Anathematic just goes and hides somewhere, I've got that entire third turn to move out and get this kill. And I also have the opportunity to use the Anathematic to pick up the second console as well, which will put me further in the lead. And he's got very few things left in his army which can go over and destroy any of my decoys. So pulling all the way back around here, and importantly going prone, because while I'm lying down on top of this thing here, the platform itself will generally block line of sight to the Anathematic from anything that's on ground level. And anything that's on a higher level is probably going to have to see past these boxes, and I can still dodge to the left or the right to get out of line of sight. And again, he's got no MSV2 in this list. He's got no big guns left. He hasn't got that many orders left. So the Anathematic is in a great position to be able to go over to this last console and retake them and win the game that way. So, final Nomad's turn, he's still for some reason got this Heckler with the Cyber Mines and Assault Pistol, so he's going to start moving that towards my line. I do have this juicy Seed Soldier just waiting for this guy to come past, though. It is a marker, so I can't just detonate the chest mine on that marker as far as I know. So he's coming to here first, then he's going to move past. I'm going to try and discover with Bit through this long angle here. I forget that I've got a Liberto there as well, but that's just my bad. Anathematic can't see beyond this platform because he's prone on top of it, and this guy's at a lower level. So we do have the camera marker moving past here. I believe it doesn't get discovered, so it comes out around right over next to the Torontid. And at this point, that's when we're trying to reveal and shoot things. And unfortunately for our friend the Heckler, the chest mine from our Seed Soldier goes off. And it goes off just as he's planning on firing at my, my R-drone. So, incredibly, Assault Pistol, 2 shots into the R-drone, 2 shots into the Seed Soldier, kills both models with, split burst, and the chest mine, although it goes off onto the Heckler to protect my lieutenant, tanks the armor save. So this is pretty unlucky for me in terms of how my games have been going lately, but a great play from our Heckler here. He's perfectly fine. He's destroyed 2 models and he's tanked the save, which now allows him to place his cyber mine in line of sight of the Torontid first, and then just poke around the corner and fire at me here. So I'm trying to dodge the chest mine, sorry, the cyber mine, just as I'm being shot at by the assault pistol, and the Heckler manages to destroy me here, killing my lieutenant, losing me the data tracker, and that's all he can do this turn. Now, luckily, I've got Mnemonica, so the lieutenant ability transfers to the Daterazzi. I think that's legal. Daterazzi does have a cube, as far as I can recall. Let's just have a quick look. Daterazzi, yeah, he's got a cube. I don't know if Impetuous affects it, but I could have always just sent it over to Bit and Kiss instead if that had not been the case. So just out of spite, the Daterazzi moves here and destroys the Heckler in revenge. Anathematic's got several orders remaining to it. Note that Mnemonica models do not have cubes, so I can't transfer the Lieutenant ability from the Torontid to the Anathematic. Comes around the corner, has another go at the decoy, does kill it this time, doesn't get crit stunned, and then is able to move over to the second console and capture it, ending the game. So despite the fact we've both lost our data trackers, I've got more consoles than he does, and he didn't actually kill any of my decoys, it turns out, even with the Kreezer, so I've killed one more decoy than he has, so I think it's like a 3-0 margin to a combined army. So a fun game. The lists, I feel my list is a bit clunky still. I still really haven't got the hang of where to put the Dazer. I'm going to be trying out some other combinations of this. But I kind of like the potential it has for running these very powerful limited insertion army lists where if your opponent takes too many models, doesn't take the right models, doesn't have the tech to overcome your big boys in the lists, you can really be very efficient with your turns and run away with a game where your AROs are just too strong for them and your attacking turns are just too efficient with TO Plasma or MSV3, HMGs, that kind of thing. So there might be a bit of potential there with that Shrouded Dazer Minelayer. I'm keen to try them a few more times before I go back to the standard, spam list that I run for Combined Army as well. So I hope you guys got something out of this, enjoyed it. It was a bit of a fun game. I actually felt like I got quite unlucky this game, but managed to outclass my opponent in terms of lists and decisions, I feel. My big swing of luck was killing that bike, but I really got hammered by that Krakot, and the Kreezer did actually extraordinarily well. It's just the Kreezer probably wasn't played that well and didn't end up in the best position, to be honest. Really unlucky with my Anathematic, but only in the points where it didn't matter against the decoy. I did get him in the end, so although I was unlucky this game, can't complain about it because it all worked out in my favor. Hope you guys enjoyed that. We'll see you again next time with some more infiNity action.